So good morning, everyone, and hello, everyone. And I'm delighted to be here. So it's possible to listen to two things at once, to be aware of two things happening at once. We do that with music, where there's maybe many instruments playing at once, and somehow we hear them all and can distinguish one from the other. And when many of the instruments in the orchestra maybe stop playing so there can be a soloist, we're very aware of the silence around the soloist. And that allows the soloist to be highlighted and accentuated. And then the whole orchestra joins in again. Or we can be listening to something in our kitchen and maybe listening to someone talking. And then suddenly the hum of the refrigerator goes off. And now there's a silence. And we still can listen to our friend speaking. And the voice of that friend is highlighted by that silence that we also can be aware of. So in the mind, as I've offered here, is that there are two different operating systems, two different, categorically different ways of thinking. There is what can be the world of discursive thought, distracted thought, jumping around thoughts, spinning thoughts, where we have conversations, where we create stories and images and predictions of the future that are relatively abstract and kind of filling it with the fullness of the story life that we live. And then and that is more like the hum of the refrigerator. And that's possible sometimes for that to become quiet. And it doesn't mean we no longer have any thoughts, but rather thinking changes as nature. It becomes thinking from a different operating system, a different place, different source within. Rather than the surface mind, now it comes from the deep mind. And the thoughts there are generally very much to the point, very much about the present moment experience, understanding it in a very simple way, recognizing it in a very simple way. Maybe they are very simple instructions we give ourselves, like, maybe I should bring more attention now to the end of my out-breath. I seem to be a little bit holding back from breathing out all the way. What would happen if I breathe all the way out, relax the exhale? So it can happen almost pre-verbally. It's almost like a sense or intuition. Or it could be the very simple thoughts. It could be simple thoughts that ask a question. And what would happen now if I tuned into the changing nature of my experience? What would happen? Or is there any wisdom now about how I get attached? What can I understand from this vantage point? So there can be very, very simple, not long discursives, just a few simple words. And when practice gets really quiet from that deep place, it's just simple thoughts, words, images of recognition. Oh, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. And there's a silence in the surface mind. There's a silence in that mind that's discussing things or having stories. And that can be exquisite. And might be easier to feel that silence, the turning off of the hum of the refrigerator in the mind, if we understand that we're not trying to get rid of all thoughts. Thoughts themselves are not the issue. It's the source from which we're thinking. Are we thinking from fear? Are we thinking from anger or desire or ambition, confusion? Are we thinking from the surface, the control tower? Or are we thinking from a quiet place where there's no stress, a place free of fear, free of anger, free of greed, ambition, free of building up a self? The self is so tied to the story-making mind. So it's when we let go of thinking, primarily we're letting go of that surface mind and be attuned to the resulting silence and quiet. A quiet that lets us hear the solo music that's so beautiful. The quiet, the voice, the thoughts that come from deep within, from a peaceful place of no stress. So to assume a meditation posture, gently close the eyes, and taking a deep breath and relaxing on the exhale, relaxing deeply. Letting breathing return to normal. And again, as you exhale with a normal-like breath, relaxing the body from head to toe. As you exhale, relaxing the thinking mind, the control tower, any pressure or tension, contraction associated with thinking. Thinking that has tension as part of it is part of that surface mind. It's not who we really are in our depths. As you exhale, slowing thinking down. So whatever you're thinking, you think more calmly. No hurry, no reaching for anything. Softening the need to think. And as you're breathing, soften your belly. Soften your belly and settle in to the pelvic floor. Let your weight be supported. The weight of your torso supported by the pelvis. Relaxing as you exhale into the pelvis. And from deep within, is there a place that is calmer, more peaceful, maybe more still than how the surface mind is? The quietest, most peaceful place within, and that's a relative concern, relatively more peaceful and calm. And in that quieter place within, allow yourself to have very quiet, gentle thoughts about staying present with your breathing. Quiet thoughts of recognition that recognizes how the sensations of breathing change as you breathe. And as you exhale, let go of your discursive thoughts. Let go of thoughts which have to do with stories of past and future, fantasy, stories that judge yourself and stories that spin good and bad, right and wrong. Let go of the surface thoughts and let go into the depths of your being, the depths of breathing, where the deep mind thinks gentle thoughts, appreciating the silence of the surface mind. Sometimes, when the surface mind is quiet, silent, quiet enough, and we relax, let go into the depths of our being, the thoughts, the cognition that we can be aware of might be pre-verbal, pre-image. There's a knowing without words, a knowing without images. It might be followed by words or images, but there is a quiet place deep within. And the more peaceful that place is, and the more silence around it, the more we can rest in that pre-verbal knowing. as we have been sitting for a number of minutes now, you might see if it's possible to relax more deeply, to release more fully, from the top of your head all the way down through your body, slowly relaxing, like there's a wonderful flow of water that starts at the top of your head and then flows down through the body, relaxing it all. With every exhale, the relaxing water moves down, settles down through your body. And from the calmest, quietest place deep within, the place that's maybe knows pre-verbally, knows without the filter of stories and memories and desires and fears. Bring to mind the people of your life, the people you might be seeing over the next days, week. And privately, so just you from deep inside, can you touch into a tenderness, a gentleness, a warmth of love or compassion, kindness, care for these people? Even not needing to act on it, just to feel it yourself. So it's independent of what you actually goes on and when you meet. Just a deep sense of goodwill, well-wishing. And may these words express your care for others. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free. Thank you. So hello and welcome to this fifth talk on wise thinking. I suspect that for much of my life I didn't think much about my thinking. I took it for granted or took it as being what it is, and sometimes in a way I took it to who I am. If my thinking represented me and my interests, my thoughts, my beliefs, my opinions, my emotions. And it wasn't anything to question or consider or investigate. It was just taken for granted as a big, solid kind of event in its own right. With meditation, I've learned to not do that, but rather to be mindful of thinking, to investigate the nature of thinking, what goes on as I think, and the ecology of thinking. And thinking is a composite thing. It's made up of many different component parts, only one of which is the content of the thoughts, the very particular ideas or stories that are being considered. And this was really a great thing to open up to the wider field of what's going on, the emotional field, the physical field, what's going on in the body energetically, the tensions, the holdings, the emotions that were the fuel or the source for the emotions. And this is a pretty, so that's included now when we do the basic introduction to meditation instructions here at IMC. And it's a whole an hour and a half on mindfulness of thinking. And so one of the things we can begin discovering is that there are different levels of thinking or different sources within from where we think, qualitatively and different kinds of thinking that we can do. And when we start understanding the range of possible ways of thinking, kinds of thoughts we can have, not so much the content, but where they arise from and what's feeding them and fueling them. And we can at some point discover that there's thinking that is free of any clinging attachment, free of any need. Whereas the surface mind, the more usual way of thinking, is operating from need, from desires, from greed, from aversion, from hostility, from criticism, from confusion, from fear. It's operating from stress. It's possible to discover a way of thinking that is stress-free. And for some people, this is the source of creativity. And some people need to take a vacation, or really, sometimes meditating is enough to awaken the capacity for creative thinking that can't flow when there's the limitation, contraction of any tension connected to thinking. So we start feeling there's a different way of thinking, a whole different approach to way of thinking. And it begins to put a question mark about the value of the usual way of thinking. Is this really the best thing to be doing? Is this really the best way to think? And more importantly, is the messages coming from the surface mind that does the thinking, is it really an accurate message? Is it true? Is it valuable? Is it something that I need to believe in? Or is it appropriate to question it and look more deeply to see more deeply what's really going on here? And, I found that the answer was often yes. It is appropriate to question. It is appropriate to look more deeply. What's really happening here, more deeply within? And so as we go deeper within, we discover that there's a place of thinking that comes out of being stress-free, or some part of us, some place, core part or deep place inside where there's calm or peace. And that the way that the nature of those thoughts are very different. They are very simple. They can be sophisticated and because they can take in the whole of who we are, that whenever we're tense, we're always limited. And we have so many faculties, so many abilities that come into play that when there's a sense of harmony within, uh, then all these things can come together into an intuitive understanding or a well-informed understanding that's, we don't necessarily recognize all the data that's coming in. And that's why it's creative. That's why it knows so much and can be so effective. And that's so deep is very simple. So it can be sophisticated, but the content of the thoughts, the way they appear, is not complicated. It's not a deep, complicated analysis and thinking, and it's a satisfying thinking. It's satisfying in and of itself. It's very simple. And even that thinking can get quieter and quieter. And sometimes it's just this absolutely most rudimentary act of recognition of what's happening in the present moment. Calm, peace, knowing, joy, concentration, spaciousness, settled. Just kind of very simple, without leaning forward or against, not wanting or not wanting, just knowing, knowing, knowing. And so much drops away of our life. Things just drop away, and it just feels like the most satisfying place to be is in this very deep, quiet knowing. That we really feel and are connected to our experience in a deep way. And it might even be possible to sense at some point that there is a kind of cognition, a kind of knowing that happens before there are words, thoughts, images. A funny thing can happen in deep states of meditation, where it's possible to feel physically that kind of like a physical sense that a thought is about to happen. The image I had when this often has is like a surface of water, and a bubble begins growing up on the surface of the water, and that thought bubble at some point will leave the surface, and I could feel a little bit of pressure, a little bit of movement or something, a little bit of energy behind the thinking. And because the deep attention is right there to feel and know and recognize what's happening, this almost pre-verbal knowing, that impulse to think fades away. I knew I was about to think, but I never discovered what those thoughts were going to be. In other words, thinking begins offline, often, in this deeper place. But we have a rich inner life that's deeper than verbal thoughts and images that we do. And when the mind is quiet, we can sometimes sense this pre-verbal knowing. And not that it's necessarily knowing accurately, but it's knowing freely with the depth that then we can, because we're paying attention, being mindful, there's a kind of a check and balance system. We kind of feel, oh, is this so? And let's find out. Let's look more deeply or check the situation out more. And so, but the important thing I wanted to highlight today is that it's possible to let the surface mind become silent. And it's exquisitely beautiful, wonderful to be in this world with the surface mind quiet and peaceful, but the deep mind present and aware and connected and considerate to what's happening around us, within us. There's an intelligence there. We don't need to have the surface mind always thinking, always operating, always figuring out. And the way that we can be present for others and present for ourselves, present for this world, with the surface mind quiet and peaceful, and the deeper mind available, is really wonderful. So to begin to recognize when the hum of the refrigerator quiets in the mind, the surface mind gets quiet. We can still think, but we're not thinking from the place where the hum is happening, the stress is happening, the silence of the surface mind. So I want to end with a story from my little book of stories called A Monastery Within. The monastery work leader always appeared peaceful. This was not so unusual among the monks and nuns of the monastery. He was unique, however, in that he remained peaceful and calm even when the monastery was at its busiest. For example, when large crowds of people visited to celebrate the Buddha's birthday. If a person was needed to visit the hustle and bustle of the local market town, this was the monk the monastery usually sent. When asked how he managed to remain peaceful, he said, "I entered the monastery for peace and quiet. I had spent years in the harried world of commerce and people. I longed for the silence the monastery was rumored to have. I was delighted with my first weeks in the monastery. The silence was exquisite. However, as I settled into the silence of the place, I was shocked to learn how noisy my own mind was. The real noise was within. It was the busyness of my own mind that oppressed me, not the noise and activity of the world. Now, it doesn't matter to me where I go. I carry the silence within me." So, I hope that this week, in talking about these different aspects of thinking, has opened a window for you to investigate and consider your thinking in a new way. And just to question what your thinking is about is a step towards a kind of mental freedom, where we're not caught in the grip of our thoughts. We don't on automatic believe every thought we have and think that we are our thoughts. There is a deeper way of being, deeper way of living in the world that is not from the control tower of the surface mind. May that surface mind, from time to time, provide you with a nurturing silence and quiet. And may you discover how to operate in this world with the surface mind quiet. So thank you very much. So I have a few announcements. And first is I'm not going to be here for the next couple of weeks. I'm going to take the next couple of weeks kind of more as a vacation time, and we'll be going to being with my family, and don't know exactly what we'll be doing yet, but I just want to spend some time, not teaching and taking time off. And so we have wonderful teachers who are coming, and Liz Powell, who has not taught yet for this 7 a.m. She's one of the teachers here at IMC, and she's a wonderful teacher and will be teaching next week. And I think she's teaching about the Brahma Viharas, a wonderful preparation maybe for the new year. And then the first week of the new year, Kodo Conlin, who has been here before, will be here. And I'll be here the following second week of the year. And my plan for the beginning of the year is, last few years I've always talked about something to do with meditation practice, and sometimes a long series on it. What I'd like to do this time is go back to the basics that we use here at IMC, and do the kind of maybe in-depth instructions on the basic insight practice that I teach here. And so even if you've been a practitioner for a long time, I hope that as I teach it, that new dimensions will become available for you. And so it'll be a week each on the 5 different areas that I emphasize in the Introduction to Meditation course: breath, body, emotions, thinking, and then practicing in life. Also, I want to say that since this is my last talk of the year, and maybe I'll just mention that for those of you who would like to support IMC, um, I did write an end of the year fundraising letter that might be interesting for you to read. And if you'd like to support IMC, you can go to the donate page on IMC's website. And certainly I'm very appreciative and grateful for the support that our center receives. And thank you for any support that you provide in all the different ways. And so I'll put it here in the chat. I think it went in. I tried. And there it is, yes. There's a link there. Hopefully, I don't know if you can get it, but I maybe it's not fully there, the link. But it's on the YouTube. Underneath the video, there's a place where the year end for Gil. So thank you. And may your beginning of this new solar year, that's today, be a rebirth of all that's good in you. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.